Hi, and welcome to Cedar Weekly, home of innovation and creation, where you can tune in to read and listen to up and coming artists and entrepreneurs sharing about the future of art and business, while at the same time connect you with hundreds of individuals making a difference. Today, I am here with Nate Hurley, lead singer from indie rock band Fox Royale. So,
Hello.
first of all, welcome and thank you for being a part of Cedar Weekly.
Thanks for having me on. This is nice. Nice way to start the morning. So,
Just as good as coffee. What are you drinking right now?
just a mocha from Joplin Avenue Coffee in Joplin. So,
Classic. Uh,
oh yeah.
that's my go-to when I'm traveling drink. I love
Yep.
mochas. But yeah. So for
Yeah.
those of you who don't know, you are one of four band members, including bassist Davis Drake, drummer Evan Todd, and keyboardist who is also your brother Caleb Hurley.
True.
And you guys started out, I believe, as classical musicians, if I'm right, and then decided to form a brand and add on your brother Caleb. Can you explain what led to make that transition into the indie rock genre and how your past, maybe as classical musicians, shaped you into the indie rock band that you are
Yeah.
today?
Yeah. Well, Evan and Davis were definitely more the classically trained. Evan was a jazz drummer, and Davis was like a classical bassist. Went to college for it and everything. I was faking it in that orchestra where I met them. I didn't know how to
Uh-huh.
read music or anything. I think the guy in the second guitar chair, he was a better guitarist than me, but I got there first. So I think it was easy for me to transition to rock music because it's easier. And I was like,
Yeah.
I can't actually play the real stuff anyway. So I think the guys just wanted to play music and they didn't write music. So whatever I came up with was what we kind of had to play because it was like, well, this is all I know how to do. So you got to have to follow. And so they were really flexible. I think they just liked playing live and it was a thing to do while we were in college. And then my brother he was traveling with us, lugging our merchandise and stuff. And
Hmm.
then we had a guy that kind of backed out of the band early on. And so Caleb stepped in and that was like a different group that we were doing a few years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, honestly, it started kind of folky sounding,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
a lot of it didn't have that driving beat of indie rock music because I didn't know how to play electric guitar. I didn't know how to
Yeah.
play like any complex chords. So I feel like it kind of developed as I learned how to do music and as I branched out into what I listened to. Slowly
Hmm.
was like, oh, I want to sound like that, or oh, I want to do that. I like that. So, I mean, the latest stuff, listen to a ton of Vampire Weekend and Strokes
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what else?
Classic.
Vaccines.
Uh-huh.
So the New Killers album, like, I feel like that's kind of
Yes.
feeding into
That's a great
what we're
album.
making. It really is, man. Put
Yeah.
in the Mirage. I love it.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's like whatever we listen to shifts drastically, like how we're going to sound. And early
Hmm.
on, I was on the Mumford and Sons train and the Need to Breathe train.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, like much more Southern sounding, even though we're not really from the South. Um,
Yeah,
but
but
yeah,
it makes sense, and it's interesting you bring that up as well because I know especially in your most recent single actually, which I'll talk about later, but it has some of those folk flair thrown into it. There's a little bit of
yeah.
I think was it like a mandolin or something in that?
Yeah,
I think
mandolin
so,
sounding on like on
a
the
little
verse.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you still have a little bit of that flavor every now and then in your songs, but I've
Yeah.
always appreciated that blend.
Sweet. Thank you.
Yeah. And I actually had the privilege, I remember back when I was in college at Greenville, I had the privilege of seeing one of your shows. And I remember it just being a very fantastic experience, very energetic experience.
Sweet.
Especially, I remember your drummer, Evan, he made a big
Yeah.
impression on me. Like, just went crazy. He was having so much fun.
I tell you
Uh,
that he cannot sit still, dude. Like it's like he's got like a spring in his seat that like his head just bops the entire show. Even on the sad songs, he's just like, yeah, this is great. Like
I know
so,
I mean, it's an incredible thing to have for a band because I feel like
yeah,
if it's gonna be someone in the band, it should be the person who's in control of the rhythm. Should
true.
be the person who's
Yeah, he
making the
definitely is like
song.
the heartbeat of our live show. Like
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
yeah, man.
yeah. Well, though I did want to also bring up like that show that I remember going to of yours.
Hmm.
It was also a really tough show, I'm sure, because there's tons of technical difficulties that happened, and
Yeah,
none of them were on your part. It was just kind of the janky school system that we had. But I remember you guys did a fantastic job of keeping the show going and keeping the audience entertained, even while everyone was kind of stressed about trying to figure out what was going wrong. And I remember you had
Yeah.
like a drum solo, you told stories, there's like audience sing along, there's all sorts of stuff that went on. And so I feel like those are true marks of an experienced performer. And I'm curious from you've had like about a 3 year stint of kind of being traveling musicians, would you say?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'm curious kind of what are some of your maybe best and worst experiences from that history of touring? Do you have any interesting stories to share?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably hands down the worst experience was a show where no one knew we were playing, and when we got there, we found out we had to pay the sound guy. And
That's
so at
always
the end of the
fun.
night, nobody saw our set, and then we were out of pocket like $150, and we were like, "Why is this guy making $150?" Like, so, and they were like, "You got to pay him, sorry." And I was just like, "Man, that's the last time I'll do something without like a contract or a
Wow.
written understanding of the expectations." So that one sucked. But what we found is like, if anybody had come to that show, they didn't need to know that we were upset about the financial arrangement while they were
Mm-hmm.
watching, because I feel like that would kind of ruin the music. Or some other bad things that have happened. In this room, actually, this is where we first played shows. I'll just show you real quick if that's okay.
Oh, that's cool.
Let's see here. There's the switch. There we go. So that stage over there is where we played like
Oh,
our first
wow.
couple shows. And I've popped many guitar strings up there. And one time I had Evan just do a drum solo. Like that's been our go-to if I break a string or if something
Drum
comes
solo.
unplugged. If he drum solos, then I give him a cue and then we count in and start a song. So I think we've just had enough times where it was like, oh crap, like we gotta fill time. Or one time I actually left. Oh, that was insane. We were in New York City, and I popped 2 guitar strings, ran out
Oh.
of strings, realized I had left my strings in the van on the street outside the venue. So I ran. Basically, I was like, hey, just like you guys jam for a few minutes, and I ran through this like little bar in New York, out the street, down the street, around the corner in the dark, and then I think we'd played New York. This is our second time that year,
Uh-huh.
and then I like couldn't find them, and eventually I found the strings, ran back, and then while that whole thing took like 4 minutes probably, then I still had to restring the guitar, and Evan's just like like just going. So that
Oh
one
my
was really
word.
fun because like we had like a strict set limit for that show, so
Mm-hmm.
we ended up having to cut like one song, but
Yeah.
it made us look very funny and kind of comical. It looked staged, honestly. It probably
Yeah.
looked like, oh, they always do this
They
thing where he runs
planned
out
it.
and comes back in. But it felt like an old, like a vaudeville skit or something.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that was probably like the craziest one. But we got to a point where I'm just like, worst case scenario, I know where my guitar case is. If I have to rebuild my guitar or grab a different one, I can,
You're prepared
So
now.
yeah,
Well,
we've had so many things go wrong.
yeah, and sometimes I feel like having things go wrong and then dealing with them in a way that makes the audience feel okay about it can make all the difference. And sometimes that's almost better than having a show that goes off completely
True.
perfectly because it's
Yeah.
more memorable for the audience and they have a good time.
Yeah, it's kind of like a friend of mine actually I met at a show where it happened where I popped the strings here, and he said the reason he liked us was because he saw us he saw the curtain come off a little bit,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
because like you could see on my face like panic, and then like we made it work and everybody started laughing, but it was just like, oh, I can't believe that didn't ruin the whole night,
Yeah, yeah.
So, and eventually, even if you nail it 10 times, there's going to be a show where a few things go wrong. So if you can figure it out without looking like an idiot or without throwing a fit, because some bands will be like, oh, this sucks, like I don't want to do this, and like that kind of attitude really kills the vibe. So
Yeah.
but
Do
yeah,
you
it's
have
been
any
fun.
do you have any like really good experiences that just kind of
Yes,
left an impact on you?
let me think of all the best ones. There were a few times where the bands we were opening, because I think the goal of any opener, which we're always the opener, it seems like, even as we're growing, like we still are usually the opener if we're not playing Joplin.
Yeah.
And I feel like anytime we can get the headlining band to pay attention to our set, that's huge. The times where we've ended up meeting the bands afterwards and they're like, hey, like we heard you from the green room and we actually wanted to come check it out. Like that's how we met the Rex. Like they were,
Wow.
they're a much bigger band than us. And we opened for them in Tulsa one time and they were chilling in the green room and they heard us do like this. We used to open our show with like a 4-part harmony and just like
Yeah.
surrounded by the mic. That's what like got them to come check us out. They heard that through the wall and they were like, what is that? And they came out and they saw this like indie rock band opening with like a barbershop quartet vibe. So, that was the first time we ever did it actually.
Oh, wow.
And which we might've done it in Greenville, which I guess would mean that we played Greenville after.
Yeah, I think he did do it in Greenville, if I remember.
Yeah. So that was like the first time we'd ever done that, and it really went off well. And
Wow.
so yeah, that was really fun. There have been times where we got to open for people that we didn't realize we're going to be playing. Like we played a So Far Sounds show in Dallas one time, and we got to Johnny Stimson was playing it with us.
Wow.
And I don't know if you've listened to him, but he's kind of popping up right now.
Just a little, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Johnny Stimson. And when we found out he was playing, I mean, we were even like way smaller then than we even are now. And I was like, oh my God, it's going to be us and the Johnny Stimson. So that was nuts. And yeah, there've just been times. I think the coolest thing for me is like whenever a room gets into your song and they didn't really know who you were before the set, which pretty much has to be the goal for any new band, is because nobody's coming there to see you for the most part, unless they're like your friends. But even if they're coming to see you, they're not coming because they love your song. They're coming because they love you or they like you.
Yeah.
So once you get them dancing to a song or jumping up and down or clapping, like, or getting them to sing a chorus with you, if that ever happens, it feels amazing because it's like they did not know that when they got here, you know? So Tulsa, I think, are where all my favorite shows have ever happened, because the Vanguard room just fills up with people that want to hear new stuff, and they are so ready for new bands every night. So, so that's been really fun. Yeah, I think I just like audience participation, and I love when things don't go wrong. So,
I think most of us do, yeah. But no, that's really interesting. Do you feel like there's maybe a overarching theme that you like to leave with the audience? I know you said you're usually in the position of the opener, but do you still have kind of this point you're trying to get across as a band, do you feel like?
I think our thing with everything I've ever written, it always sounds kind of happy, even if it's about something sad. So I feel like at our shows, we try to keep the energy up. Obviously, like opening a show, you want to bring energy anyway, but I think our stuff is we like to sing about sad things. We like to sing about what's actually going on, and we'll probably joke a little bit and be a little awkward because we just are on live shows. I think we kind of treat them like they're friends from our hometown kind of thing. Not like a small town feel, but just like if I ran into you at a coffee shop, I'd probably say the exact same thing that I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
And so I like that, but also just like, wow, those guys have fun every time, you know? And I also like to, our goal is always, even if we're opening, like we want to have the most energy in the room of any band. So it's not so much that we want to like outdo the other bands, but we do want to we want to be like, oh man, those first guys were crazy. Like that's always my goal. I want people to be like, man, like they were so excited and hype, you know, like they're the opener. Like they were just so happy to be here. Also gratitude. Like we try to express like we get to do this, you know, like there's no like right to play a show. And there's so many variables that come between somebody actually getting to perform. So anytime we get to do it, it's like, this should be amazing, because we didn't know for sure we'd get this, you know, a few months ago, we didn't even know we'd be here. So, so I think there's something about just being grateful for every single opportunity. And there's a mentality from Scott Pilgrim. It's like a gig is a gig is a gig. And our mentality ever since we started doing music in our other bands and stuff was just like, play every show that you're offered, which you can't always do, but if you operate from there, then you're more likely to say yes than no. And you know, every room, even if it's like a weird coffee shop or if it's a weird, like we played a yogurt shop, just like outside in the parking lot. That was like a weird one. But like even those, it's like, well, we did get some new fans. We did sell some merch, you know? So if you can do it with the right attitude, it's never going to be a total loss, you know? We just appreciate it, because nobody asked us to be a band. That's another thing that I have to remind myself. Like nobody was like, hey, you should do that. I was like, no, I'll do this. And the fact that anybody lets me is kind of cool. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious then, what kind of fuels that drive for you? Because I feel like if there is a theme maybe for your band, it would be perseverance, because you've had to overcome lots of just the hardships of traveling, low budgets, breakdowns, long distance relationships, and now pandemics to add to that list. So what's that drive that fuels you to keep going every night?
Um, I think that what's great for us is we enjoy every aspect of it, except maybe like the legal side, like the business stuff. I don't really enjoy that.
Mm,
Thankfully, we have some management now, so we don't have to do as much of that. But I love writing songs, and the way we write songs now is way more productive. And we used to just jam in my living room or my garage for hours, and then eventually we'd have one song. Now it's
yeah.
like if I write a catchy hook or a melody, we can just record it immediately and then build the whole song from there. And
Mm,
it takes it's just way more focused, and it cuts down on production time. So we can crank out a song pretty much every time we get together anymore. Um, so and every new song sounds very different for us because it's like we all listen to something new. We consume a lot of music, so I feel like we love that aspect of it. And then if you write a new song, you want to go play it because a lot of ours are high energy. And so it's like once we write the song, we're like, oh man, like this is fun. Like I hope we can do this at the next show. Then we have to go practice, you know. And then practicing live is totally different than writing like in a room together. So I enjoy each of those equally. So it's like whether we're
yeah.
going to be writing in my studio or Davis's studio, or if we're just going to go in the garage and practice for 6 hours, like all of that's fun. And our producer is typically Nick Anderson, and
Hmm.
Nick out in California. It's like anytime we get a chance to go out and record, you know, Nick makes us sound better than we thought we could, you know,
Uh-huh.
and he produced our first two singles. And so it's like the experience. Like some people hate traveling. I love traveling. So if I
Yeah.
can just, and now we get to go on a plane sometimes, which is insane because it's like we've driven across country in like a 5-seater and like that, and with all of our gear like on our laps and
Uh-huh.
stuff, and
Uh-huh.
like that was the worst. But it was like that's how
Uh,
we got the deal with War Road Music. They were like, yeah, come on out. So we were like, okay, well we can't afford plane tickets, so we just drove Davis's little Honda Fit across the
wow.
country. And but it's just like for me personally, like personality wise, I love new things. I'm like I don't know if you're familiar with Enneagram stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm a 7, so I'm always like, yeah, let's do whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
So if we get invited to a show, even if it's last minute, we'll drive 6 hours to open tomorrow, you know, if we can.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think having me as the front man has been it's been a huge advantage sometimes because we've done way more than a lot of people would do because
Hmm.
I don't always count the cost.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's hamstrung us a couple times because I've like said yes to something and then I was like, oh, I should have said no to that.
Yeah.
But we're gonna do it, you know.
Yeah.
And then after shows, there's like the adrenaline you get from playing a live show is different than practicing the song or writing the song. So it's like every stage of production, from like meeting the band, coming up with the name, that was a lot of fun, you know. And we're all
Hmm.
best friends too, so it's like it's never a
That
drag to
helps.
hang out.
Yeah.
And it functions. All four of us are actually married now. We've all got wives.
Wow.
They're pretty good friends too. But it's weird because the band, in a lot of ways, prepared us for marriage because the communication aspect of it.
Uh-huh.
Like I
Uh-huh.
think one of our dads was like, you know, I think Davis's dad said, you know, it's going to be a lot like a marriage. And Davis was like, yeah, but we get along so great, like you know, years ago. And then it was like over time Davis and I have fought a lot, you know, and then like we made peace and now we never fight because we get each other, we understand it a lot better,
Yeah.
and that's all fed in so well that it's almost easier to be in a band than it is to be married. And most musicians aren't married like when they're in indie rock bands, so
Uh-huh.
it's like you get married and you quit the band kind of thing. But
Yeah.
now we're like, well, we actually like the band fuels our relationships too, you know. So yeah, it's just really fun, man, and everything we write
Wow.
about has changed because we're all in actual like serious relationships. So
Wow. Yeah.
but
I wasn't aware that all of you guys were married, so that's really cool. Um,
yeah, Caleb just got married in March, so
oh
right
wow.
before the pandemic.
That's
Yeah,
really, yeah. And it's interesting because I was going to bring up your new singles, which you touched on as well. And I know the first one was directly in relation to that idea of being in a long distance relationship and the struggle that comes from
yeah,
that. But I also want to talk about your second one, which does touch on that idea of kind of a struggling relationship. But it also, I feel like if I'm interpreting the song right, it seems more like a prayer, uh, talking about I need help to get better, but I don't honestly know why you'd help me. And it kind of blurs the lines between who you're talking to. So I'm
yeah,
curious, can you explain a little bit more about the song and
yeah.
maybe how your religion and music intersect as well?
Sure. It's always a point of tension. because you don't want to get, I don't know, like it could just be like a outdated idea in my mind, but I don't want to get labeled as like a Christian band, but we've all been Christians for the entirety, like for most of our lives, each of us. I've gone through moments where I didn't really care as much, or I wouldn't say a crisis of faith. It was like super apathetic about it for a few years. And as I've gotten serious about my relationship, I realized like you can't just draw from yourself for an unlimited amount of love for anybody or any job or discipline. Like that has to come from somewhere. And I think it's naive to think that like, oh, I'm going to pick this person right here and I'm going to love them so much just naturally for the rest of my life, you know? And there's a certain amount of discipline and drawing on another source. And I feel like, at least for Christianity, what I benefit from is I think there's another source that within me, like the Holy Spirit, that provides that ability to love other people and to love what I do and to find joy in crappy situations. And with Out of My Hands, a lot of it was I had just gotten married when we wrote that song. I got married, and like a month later, I went and spent like 2.5-3 weeks in California. Wow. And Marty stayed in Joplin. And it was we wrote Don't Call Me You're Lonely and Out of My Hands around that time, if I remember right. So I was like last summer, I think. Yeah, we were Out of My Hands last summer. Then we went back again in October and wrote Don't Call Me You're Lonely. Yeah. So it was Out of My Hands. It was a lot of like, part of it's talking to Marty. Or more, I feel like the best way to describe what that song is that's like me in the same room as her, like picture, maybe she's asleep and I'm talking to myself, reflecting, and also talking to God at certain points, just about like, how am I supposed to do this? You know, like I know I'm going to do the band. I know like this is where it's going, but I don't know what's going to happen next month. I don't know when I'm going to get on a tour. I don't know which, you know, COVID, no tours, but I just didn't know what was going to happen next. But it's like, well, I told her that I was going to stick with her forever. And so I got to figure out how to do that and do this other thing. And because I made a commitment to the band for a few years as well, you know? So it's really hard to balance that because like marriage, as far as I believe, is a lifelong commitment. So figuring out how to balance that with a job that requires so much more of you than a 9 to 5, it's just hard, you know? And I actually wrote it when I wasn't in the room with Marty. I wrote it across the country and just about this longing to like, I want to take care of her. I want to like make sure that we're going to be okay. And, you know, like she might hate this sometimes, you know, the whole bridge is about like, you know, at some point you might not want to be with me, you know? But we chose this, so we got to make it work, and not just make it work, but we got to figure out how to like take care of each other throughout the duration of our lives, which is a pretty lofty goal, you know? So I feel like that song, there's a little bit of a prayer to it. Like the verses, the chorus is kind of a prayer. The verses are like an acknowledgement of like everything that's kind of shitty right now. And so there's like I switch back and forth from like talking to myself and acknowledging my own flaws, and then the bridge is like acknowledging Marty, and then the chorus is more of a prayer to God. So it's definitely all over the place as far as what I was feeling, but I was feeling a lot, man, because it's like part of me is like I felt like ecstatic about California, and then I was like, oh my God, like I gotta call Marty, or like Don't Call Me Lonely, I gotta text her back, you know, and I'm doing a really bad job right now. So it's a learning process for sure. But
and I feel like though that's this place where a lot of good music comes from, is that point of tension. And it's crazy what the amount of pressure and tension that musicians go through, especially traveling musicians like yourself who just travel a ton when it's not a pandemic. But I'm curious if you would have any advice though for someone who's kind of starting out on that journey for themselves, because there's a wide spectrum of where up and coming artists are at, but I know that you have to acknowledge this level of struggles and trials that you're going to have to get through as a person if you choose this to be your direction in life. So what would maybe be something you could say that would be some advice for that person who is looking to go down that road?
I mean, I can tell you what we did. I think I've always been like a set a goal you can't achieve kind of thing so that you'll get close to it. So like aspire to something that may never happen. Instead, don't set the bar where you know you can hit it. So I feel like for what we did, I think it was in 2017 when we were starting to tour in a different band. And I was like, if we just go hard at this, like we decided, I guess we made all of our commitments and our aspirations before we started the process. So I was like, we're going to play for 3 years. We'll reevaluate in 2020. And from May of 2017 to May of 2020, we won't talk about quitting. We won't talk about doing anything else. We won't restructure. We won't take breaks. We're going to play 100 shows a year for 3 years.
Wow.
And I had no idea how. Somebody, literally just one guy, one musician a little like bigger than us, told us, if you want to get noticed by a record label, if you want to get signed, if you want to get good management, go play 100 shows a year for a few years, and then they'll find you. Which we did for 2 years. Nothing happened. But we got to a point where it was like so second nature to say yes to shows that when the Rex show came up, we only had like a week's notice because I think Bad Flower, thank goodness for Bad Flower, like they dropped the show. I think they had like a double booking or something. And because they dropped it a few days before, we got the gig. And I didn't even know who the Rex were. My brother liked him and my sister liked him, but I hadn't listened to him yet.
Yeah.
But it's like if we created a culture in our group that was like, this comes first. So at the time, none of us were in serious relationships when we started. So it was the kind of thing where like every girlfriend, every date we went on, it was like, hey, just so you know, I'm doing 100 shows a year. Exactly. It's like, this is what I'm already in. So if you are interested in still hanging out with me, despite knowing how often I'll be gone, it was like a good vetting process too, you know, to find a companion that's interested. And like a lot of bands, I think they end up dating somebody that's really cool and they love the band thing for a while because it's like fun on a Friday night to go watch your significant other in a band. But if you don't realize that that's going to be happening 100 times out of 365 days, like that becomes not fun really fast. Yeah. But I feel like a lot of bands don't realize that's what they need to be doing. So right now you don't have to do that. I think there's other bands that are doing great, like Trey's band. I like their model is more like they would just make the great songs and they would grow their following online. I think there's a place for that now because it's so much easier to produce your own music. We didn't know how to do that originally. So we were like, let's just go out and play as many shows as possible. Yeah. We focus now on trying to write that good song and never putting all our eggs in the basket of one song. So we write a good one, hopefully, and then it's like, all right, that's great. Let's give it a week. Let's write another one, you know?
Yeah, and let's make it better.
I think you have to keep writing. So any band that's starting out, like you're going to have to find a balance of like the overzealous mentality that we had of like 100 shows a year. I don't know if anybody needs to do that right now. It might be that you need to write 5 songs a month and track 2 demos a month, you know, because what you want to have whenever you meet somebody, like when we met Richard or when we met the Rex guys, like we had stuff to show them like, hey, we've been working on this. These are all the shows we played. Like the main benefit that we got out of the shows is we just met a ton of people that made it possible for us to meet the right people, you know? And that's how we got our booking agent. That's how we got any kind of gigs outside of Joplin. That's how we met every band we know. It was just like we ended up playing with them in different cities. There's a tremendous amount of networking that happens when you do that. So that's part of it. I think it's like finding out, like whatever it is, you got to set a goal and you have to stick to it. Because what will happen is it'll get hard or you won't want to practice. We practiced every day for a couple days a week for those 3 years. Like it was like every Tuesday, and then now we do Thursday, Friday, Saturday every week. So it's like there's a consistency to it that you just have to do regardless of how it feels, because if this is what you want, it's like a startup, you know, like you're not going to see profit for a few years. No one's going to care at first, but you have to do it so that whenever you do see people, you know what you're talking about and you know what you're trying to present, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It for us, it's just snowballed and it's gotten really good. COVID put a pause on all the live shows, which was interesting because that was our go-to, you know? So then it was like, all right, well, now we've just written a ton of songs. So only other piece of advice I would give to anybody that's listening to me ramble would be just remember that, like, nobody owes you their attention. Nobody owes you their money, their time. Nobody has to buy your merch. So there's a certain attitude that band people tend to have of like, yeah, like my crap's good, so you better like it, you know? And you have to be arrogant enough to do music, but you got to be humble enough to realize that like, you're not entitled to anything. And there's a lot of entitlement with, you know, I would say like at least half the bands we played with have this attitude of like, we're better than, you know, and part of it's like that performance mentality, which you need to have, but
Yeah.
it gets so toxic so fast, and you kind of alienate people at shows if you think you're better than the crowd, you know?
Yeah.
And if the crowd didn't like it, like pay attention to that and change your music, you know? So, or figure out what went wrong. I wouldn't say just change for every crowd, but if they're not responding to your live show, reevaluate, you know? You just got to be teachable, and we weren't teachable at first. And the more humble we've learned to be about certain things, the better we've been able to grow. Cause it's like, you just got to admit when something's not working. And if the song didn't take off on Spotify, write another one, you know, like don't be like, oh, this freaking algorithm or whatever I don't get paid enough. It's like Spotify doesn't pay anymore. Like it's not about, you can't make it about royalties. Like you're never going to see a dime, you know, like, it's just figuring it out, and you have to love the process. Like as corny and cliche as that sounds, like the whole Gary Vee thing where it's like, just enjoy the daily game. I enjoy that, you know, like even just figuring out how we're going to get to the next show when we don't have gas money. Like all of that can be fun, honestly. Like as sad as it sounds, like it can really be a good time, especially when you're young and you don't have a lot going on. Like just go out and figure it out, you know, like you don't have to have it all like a perfect business model the entire time. But hopefully you're learning, and 4 years from when you started, you should be better at it than you were 4 years ago. But no, I just love it, man. Like whatever it is that we're doing, I don't intend to ever quit doing it. So.
No, that's a fantastic answer. Thank you for, that I mean, I as a musician find that helpful, but I'm sure a lot of other people find that helpful as well. I wanted to quickly transition into a thing I like to do, which is just a rapid fire question round. Just
okay.
Some are fun, some are more serious, but you can take it however you want. But this is just, off the top of the mind kind of thing. So, all right. If you had to switch roles with one of your bandmates permanently, who would it be?
Davis. Because he produces, and I'd have to learn how to produce. So
there you go.
That'd be a nice skill. Yeah.
Okay. What popular beverage is comparable with your life?
Dr. Pepper.
Awesome. If you could trade lives with a movie character, who would it be?
A movie character.
Yeah.
Probably Star-Lord.
So that's a great answer. Wow. That's amazing. Who is an artist you've been listening to a lot recently?
Sunreal.
Perfect. If you can make one addition to your live show and money wasn't a factor, what would it be?
A gigantic LED screen.
Oh, yeah. If you were running for office, what would your campaign slogan be?
I can figure it out.
It's good enough. Does anyone in the band have any hidden talents?
Hidden talents in the band. Caleb is a writer, and he works on he's always coming up with characters and writes a lot of, I think, comics and stories for himself mostly right now, but I'm hoping that he gets one published at some point. But yeah,
that's cool. If you could go on tour with any two bands, who would they be?
Any two bands in the world.
Any two, or any one, if that makes it easier.
I'd have to say first one would be The Strokes. Second one would be either Vampire Weekend or Coldplay.
Awesome. That'd be, cool. And lastly, what advice would you give to someone who looks up to you?
Don't overthink. Yeah, don't overthink your decisions. That's my big one. Because you just don't have all the information, and what worked for me isn't going to work for you. So don't do it exactly how I'm doing it. Don't do it exactly how someone else is doing it, but figure out like what I'm able to do consistently and just take that. So for me, it's just doing something every single day from your thing, your project. Just do that. Like if it's sending 10 emails a day, send 10 emails. If it's writing another song, definitely write another song. And it's, booking a show, then book a show. But whatever your goal is, like set it and don't adjust it based on how you feel in that day. Just make sure you're hitting your goals on a weekly, monthly, and yearly basis. it can't
Awesome.
be about how you're feeling about it. That's what I've learned. So
Mm. Yeah, I completely agree. That's very true. Um, Thanks for putting up with that. I know we're both running on a little coffee this morning. But
no worries, man.
yeah. Um, Lastly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this year, which has
Okay.
obviously been some very unique circumstances for
Mhm.
both musicians and non-musicians, of course. But I want to know, how do you personally stay afloat as a musician during this challenging time?
Um, I've had a lot of people in my community tell me like to cut myself some slack because I've felt like, oh, this isn't our best year. Like we're not hitting our numbers. Like our fan base hasn't grown as much as I wanted it to. But the way I grow that requires shows. So I've had to restructure and learning TikTok, that kind of thing, which I wouldn't say we've learned it, but learning new avenues,
Uh-huh,
for
uh-huh.
social media and everything, and posting 4 times a day, even though, like on our stories, even though there's not always something to post about. There's like the grind. So just choosing that, like, this is the situation, and you can either do less and have a valid excuse, or you can do more and come out ahead of everybody else. So
Yeah.
we decided we buckled down and we're like, all right, I don't care about, like, we took like a week off for COVID where it was like, okay, I don't feel like it's safe this week. After that, we
Hmm.
were like, screw it. People are working. We can get together and keep working on the band. Um, so what I've done to keep peace is basically what I've done is I've tried to find as many challenges as possible for me to take on. So I started going to the gym every day, and which I never used to do, but it's like, might as well get in shape, trying to
Yeah.
get my bachelor's degree
Yeah.
knocked out before I start touring again. It's been a nice challenge. I climbed a mountain with some buddies. We didn't summit, but like I reached my physical limit, which was really nice.
Yeah.
Um, and then I've also spent a lot of time with my wife and just had to figure out, how do you live together? Like, how do you function when you have so much more time together than like any of your role model couples have ever had to like be in the same room, because nobody's in their room like 7 days a week, for like 12 hours conscious. So, uh, quarantine was nuts. It was very crazy time. I feel like everybody was like in an unparalleled situation. So figuring all that out and like learning how to like cut myself some slack whenever I mess up or whenever I watch too much TV for a day. Like there were a couple of days
Yeah.
where I just didn't accomplish anything.
Yeah.
But realizing like this just is how the world is now, so you have to adapt. So a lot of it for me is like mental toughness, like a lot of Jordan Peterson isms, just
Hmm.
like figure out your stuff before you try to figure out someone else's. And nobody owes you jack, so get out and go earn what you want. So a lot of that like old school American mentality serves me well personally. So because I'm
Yeah.
very much task oriented. So
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Nate, for being here with us. And I know you probably got places to go, but just lastly, did you have any shows that you wanted to quickly just announce the dates and where you're gonna be?
yeah, November 12th will be in Coffeeville, Kansas at Terrabinth Coffee House. And November 14th will be at my house in Joplin, Missouri, which you can find on our Facebook page. It's going to be a free event, fall party. And then November 15th, we're playing a show at the Vanguard in Tulsa, which I think is one of like their first shows since COVID happened. So
Wow.
that'll be really fun. I'm hoping that Tulsa turns up for that one. And, bring a mask, bring a jacket
Yeah.
to the fall party. But yeah, I'm really
Yeah.
excited about it. Also, check out nextstopjoplin.com for
Mm.
shows in Joplin. If you're watching this from Joplin, we're putting on a lot of secret shows right now and prepping for next year. So, in fact, if you got bands in Portland, there's a girl up there, Amber Ace, I think.
Mm.
I don't know if she's in Portland, but she's somewhere up in the Pacific
That
Northwest.
area.
I think she's going to play one next year. So bands from across the country are invited to submit and apply to play Next Stop Joplin if they come through on a tour. So that's something I've started since COVID happened. But yeah, man,
Awesome. Well, I'll put the links below, and thank you again for joining us on week 5 of Cedar Weekly. See you next week
thanks for
for
having me.
another yeah. See you next week for another exclusive interview with musician All Caps Trey. So see you next time.